Stuart and I will be presenting to you around VMware's healthcare solutions and how Cerner fits into the puzzle and enhances that solution. So hopefully most of you are either VMware customers or Cerner customers and want to know more about what we've done together and how we've made our joint solution more interesting for you folks, or how it fits into a healthcare context. So having said that, I'll introduce myself. I'm Pramod Mahadevan. I manage the Technical Alliances team for healthcare partners at VMware. And this is Stuart.
Stuart Jackson, Cerner Corporation. I'm a senior technology architect responsible for all of the different types of technologies that enable this solution. So it includes VDI.
Stuart and I guess the running joke is that we've been working on this for a couple of years, and we've thrown punches at each other and know each other quite well. So if you find us pulling our legs through the course of this presentation, don't be too surprised. So that being said, this is a disclaimer saying that Frank Neidem, our healthcare czar, is in the room, so we need to watch what we say. And going to the key takeaways of this presentation, right? So there's a couple of things that we'd like you to leave with. The first one is not in any particular order here, because I don't want to take any of Stuart's thunder away. The first one is that VMware View, our virtual desktop technology, is a technology that's tailored towards healthcare workflows. So it's not just a CapEx, OpEx discussion that we're talking about here with VMware View. It's also tailored towards optimizing clinician workflows, making patient care better, and making sure that doctors spend more time with patients. And that's certainly been one of my pet peeves when I go to visit my doctor, is that he has one foot out the door and he's not really concerned about what my ailment is, right? I don't know if most of you have this experience as well, or is it just me? And the second is how Cerner takes advantage of some of the capabilities that we provide within VMware View to provide a location-aware solution called Instant Access, and that also extends the notion of the Follow Me desktop, which we provide as part of our capabilities. Stuart, anything to add?
Nope.
So this is the agenda for today. So we have about probably 35 odd slides. So it shouldn't be too onerous for you guys. And we'll save time for questions towards the end. So we structured it such that we talk about View as an enabling technology for healthcare workflows, and after that we'll jump into the weeds with what Cerner is doing with our technology and how they've enabled their instant access solution with VMware View and ThinApp. So there's two parts of the solution, right? So there's the virtual desktop technology, and then there's the application virtualization technology, which is called ThinApp. And Cerner leverages both technologies. So we'll be talking about how they leverage both technologies to create a go-to-market solution for their customers. We'll talk about deployment options. Again, this goes back to what I was saying about View and ThinApp being deployment options. And Citrix XenApp is also a deployment option for Cerner. So Stuart will be talking about that and how that ties into a View/ThinApp deployment configuration. So once that is done, we'll go into Q&A and take questions from you folks. I know some of you folks have already talked to Stuart or are working with Stuart around this solution. So if you have any specific questions or general questions around the technology, we'll be glad to take that. I think I was told that most of you guys have seen these slides, so I'm just going to skim through this and go into my slides here. So we've broken out VMware's healthcare solutions into three pillars, right? So we talk about the private cloud, which is, VMware's messaging is mostly around the private cloud and what we do to enable the private cloud. So this is around rationalization and consolidation of your data center as a customer, right? So you can virtualize your applications, and this is not just, print servers, file servers, Exchange that we're talking about here, even though some people consider Exchange to be mission critical. But we're also talking about healthcare applications here, right? So like I was saying in my introduction, I work with a lot of the healthcare partners, and most, if not all, healthcare vendors or ISVs today, including Cerner, are virtualizing their server-side applications. And in Cerner's case, this is called the mid-tier applications or mid-tier servers, right? Tony's in the room from Cerner, and I've worked with him in the past around mid-tier virtualization with Cerner. And I think the consolidation ratio that we kind of ballparked with mid-tier is about 45 to 12 when you virtualize their mid-tier servers, right? So that's the kind of consolidation you're seeing with VMware virtualization, and that's the part where you can take your data center, virtualize your applications, and create this notion of a private cloud within your data center. The desktop technologies, which is primarily what we'll be focusing on today, is our View and ThinApp technologies, right? So this is where we go back to tying our desktop technologies to healthcare workflows. So we'll be talking about how View not only is a CapEx, OpEx kind of a discussion point for the IT at a healthcare provider, but it's also around patient care and improving productivity and improving time with patients and making your clinicians more happy around the way they work with medical applications. Cloud services, this is the third pillar, and of course, this is gaining a lot more traction with healthcare ISVs. And most ISVs, including Cerner, are either going to or already have some kind of a managed services offering, right? So managed services in the healthcare space is analogous to software as a service, where the ISV hosts your application and provides remote access to those applications via some kind of either tunnel or private connectivity to their data center. So in Cerner's case, this is called Cerner Works. And if you have any questions about that, I'm sure Tony and Stuart can give you more information around that. So these are the three pillars that we focus on within healthcare, and we are enabling all three pillars with our healthcare ISVs. So having said that, I'm going to kind of step into the desktop pillar at this point and talk some more about what we do there, what we provide, and how that enables ISVs like Cerner to leverage our technologies. Okay. So this is a slide that talks about your challenges in today's environment with the clinical desktop, right? So there's things that we've heard from talking to customers and from talking to partners like Cerner that, with accessing your desktops and applications on your desktops in a clinical environment, there's always challenges around multiple passwords. Login times take too long. It takes in the order of minutes with some of these applications and technologies to get into your desktop and access your applications. This, causes workflow disruptions, right? Because if your doctor is spending a couple of minutes with each patient just in terms of logging into that desktop and accessing the application, then you can kind of consider the ripple effect of that as the clinician goes through multiple patients or through their workflows during the course of the day. Terminals are devoted to individual applications. So this is, again, another thing that I ran into quite a bit with different ISVs. But the notion that, when you move from location to location within a hospital, typically there's not a notion or a way to say that, okay, this session can move with the clinician within the hospital. So as a result, you have terminals that are dedicated to certain functions in certain areas of the hospital, right? So you have the nurse's station, and within the patient room, you have a patient station or a patient computer that is dedicated to that purpose. So you can't really share or move a session with the clinician with existing technologies and existing ISV applications. Of course, some ISVs are more advanced than that and have done enhancements to their technology to provide location awareness, either in a Citrix context traditionally or now in a VMware context, right? Citrix is another challenge. Printing with Citrix, I'm sure most of you are familiar with that or have heard of that from your customers or from your clinicians, right? So how printing is a challenge and how it breaks down and causes inefficiencies in the workflows. Again, this is something that we've done quite a bit on in terms of enhancing printing, and we'll talk about that. Of course, there's locally installed applications, and how do you update those applications, right? So if you have them installed locally. And how do you allow clinicians to remotely access applications? So in a radiology kind of scenario, if you have referring physicians, how do you let them remotely access, let's say, images and look at those images, review those images remotely from their home office, for example? So, and all of these challenges can, vary between floors, rooms, stations, tasks, and so on. So, there's definitely a compounding effect in terms of the challenges that you experience here and the variety of workflows you have within a clinical environment. The solution, well, we claim the solution is, virtualizing your clinical desktop, right? So the notion is that you decouple the desktop from the end-user device. And I'm sure you've heard of this during the course of the last couple of days as to how you virtualize your desktop and treat it as more of a dumb end-user device. The end-user computer becomes an end-user dumb end-user device. And your desktop is actually running in the data center and can be accessed from multiple points within the clinician environment, right? Excuse me. So the desktops are running in the secure data center, so there's automatic data security because there's no question of having your laptop or desktop stolen and data going with that, right? And you hear about that a lot in the context of healthcare providers losing patient data, losing computers, and losing data as a result. So once your desktop's in the data center, you can present that same desktop to the end-user device across terminals or across devices, right? So you can present it to a cow, which is a computer on wheels or workstation on wheels. You can take it home, log in remotely, and access the same desktop session. Or you can log in from a mobile device like the iPad, which some of you in this room have. And I'm sure you guys saw the demo around connecting to a virtual desktop from the iPad that probably Steve showed you earlier. So VMware View certainly has a healthcare workflow focus, as you might have gleaned from what I just talked about, right? So the end users can now get to their applications faster, can get to their desktop faster, and not have to spend a couple of minutes per patient just accessing the desktop and getting their printers to configure and so on. They can roam that session, right? So you connect to that desktop from the patient room, you move to a different location, you access the same desktop with the same applications running in the background, and your printers are automatically reconfigured based on the location that you're at. So that's location awareness combined with the fact that your session is moving with you. So the desktop is always available. As a result of virtualizing your desktop, you're able to provide it high availability, disaster recovery, scale up, scale down the performance of your desktop, similar to what you do on the server side with virtual machines. And of course, the look and feel is most critical in a healthcare context because your clinicians are probably not all tech savvy, so you don't want to change the look and feel on them and want to alter what they do today, right? So if you make it faster and retain the same look and feel, then that's the ideal scenario. From an IT perspective, though we probably will not be talking about it from the IT standpoint as much in the course of this presentation, so it makes it easier to manage the desktop, right? So you want to update the operating system image, it makes it easier to do that because you have this notion of linked clones with VMware View where you modify one parent image and that parent image automatically updates all of the linked desktops or linked clones associated with that parent image with VMware View. So that makes it easy to update the operating system image. And with applications, if you consider our ThinApp technology, right, which is application virtualization, so you can package your application as a single executable hosted on a network share and stream it down to the desktops. And if you want to update that application, it's one location to go to update the application. So you can quickly roll out new applications, new patches for applications and operating systems, maintain compliance because your desktop is in the data center, it's secure, so you don't need to worry about devices being stolen, data being stolen. You can satisfy end users because your access to desktops is faster, and also the session roams with them, the application roams with them, and the application context can change depending on where they are within the clinical environment. And of course, there's reducing costs, right? So we're doing a lot of things around making the desktop TCO or virtual desktop TCO better than a physical desktop scenario, right? So that's sort of been the traditional Achilles heel for virtual desktops, but we're certainly doing a lot of things to make that better in terms of what I talked about earlier, linked clones, which reduces your storage footprint and takes the costs out of a large SAN deployment for a large virtual deployment or virtual desktop deployment scenario. Is everyone okay so far? Am I going too fast, too slow? Any feedback? Okay, cool. So I'll talk about this briefly, the follow me desktop notion with Cerner Millennium, and then Stuart will, of course, go into the details here with what he's done to enable this. But this is just an overlay of what Cerner does and how our technology maps to the follow me desktop notion or instant access with Cerner, right? So this is the typical workflow that we see with the follow me desktop scenario. So doctor authenticates to the desktop by tapping in, right? So you have a proximity card, smart card, biometric reader, which is attached to the end user device. So doctor walks up, taps in, and that instantaneously accesses the desktop, and single sign-on is enabled to access the applications that are running on that desktop. So the application launches, the desktop is available within a matter of seconds, right? The second phase is, once you're done working with the application, the doctor then moves away from the desktop or moves to a different location. So you can either tap out, or with some of our partner technologies like Imprivata, there's actually a camera on the device itself that can sense if you're in front of the computer or have moved away from the computer, right? And it senses you as a persona, right? So it knows that if I'm signed in as Pramod and it recognizes my face, it makes sure that I'm in front of the computer so that it shows me that session. If I walk away, it locks that computer and makes sure that it's secure. So you should check out our partner technologies that are doing cool things around single sign-on and enabling these kind of proximity-aware sign-on, sign-off capabilities. So you either lock the session by tapping out or walking away, depending on the technology and how you want to enable that. And you move to a different location and sign into that desktop by tapping into a different location. Since the desktop is in your data center, you're able to move from location to location and sign back into the same desktop and access the application in the same state that you left it at the previous location, right? The application context can change depending on the intelligence the application has. So if it has the ability to change context and say, okay, I'm now accessing the application from within a patient room, so I can only see a single patient in data, right? So I cannot see all of the patients in the ward, but I can only see a single patient because I'm inside of that patient room, and that meets your HIPAA regulations. So that's application specific, and if they can take advantage, or application vendors can take advantage of our location awareness capabilities, then you can build that into the application and make sure that you show only the relevant data there. So the application shows up, the desktop shows up in seconds, and you're able to start working faster than you would with your traditional desktop kind of scenario. So to overlay what View does in terms of enabling these capabilities, right? So to quickly walk through our enabling technologies here. So in terms of signing into the virtual desktop, the tap and go functionality, or tap in and access your desktop kind of functionality, we have USB device redirection, right? So you have a USB smart card reader that's plugged into the end user device, and you tap into that, and that passes through your authentication information to the single sign-on agent or to the View connection broker to help you sign on to your desktop. We support proximity cards, smart cards, biometric authentication as a result of that capability, right? And pass-through authentication is where your credentials from, let's say, a thick client or end-user device are passed through to the virtual desktop as well. So there's one login, and you don't have the multiple login kind of scenario to access your virtual desktop. So with the next part of this workflow, you single sign on into your applications, and re-authentication is required. So in certain scenarios, which Stuart will talk about. But to enable that, we have single sign-on support, again, with the help of our partner solutions for applications. But we also have single sign-on for just the virtual desktop itself, which is passing through your credentials and logging into the virtual desktop. So we provide location identification, and this is the capability that most of our application ISVs are taking advantage of, right? So which is, if you move from location to location, how do you know that a person is logging in from a certain location? With a physical desktop, it's easy because it's not moving. That device is assigned to a particular location, so you know where that clinician's at. But with a virtual desktop, it's device dependent, as in the end user device is what tells you where the end user is logging in from. So what we do is pass in that end user device information to the virtual desktop so that the application running within the virtual desktop now knows where the clinician is signing in from. Question?
Yeah, so there's like a client name.
Exactly. So it's actually passed into the registry in what's called the volatile environment, and it's exactly the client name. So it's we provide a certain naming convention. It's called view client machine name, but that's the computer name that the user is logging in from. And Cerner takes advantage of that and makes changes on their side to map application-specific printers to their application. In addition to that, there's also connect-reconnect triggers, right? This is important because the application needs to know when the user has connected or reconnected to that virtual desktop session. So we provide triggers that say, okay, once there is a connect event, you can trigger a custom script that goes off and does something at that point that is application-specific. And that happens at the connect point and the reconnect point, right? And again, that's something that our application ISVs leverage to provide additional functionality around location awareness. Dynamic printer mapping. So we do have printer mapping within View itself as a result of the thin print technology that we have, right? So any locally connected printers or network printers that are mapped to, let's say, a thick client that you're using to access your View desktop are automatically passed through to the virtual desktop session. So that printer mapping exists, and it is dynamic, as in you move around, your printer mapping changes, it's going to pass it through to the virtual desktop. But there's also application-specific printing, which is, Cerner-specific or ISV-specific, where they do different things around what's called maybe back-end printing to map the right printers for different functions. So we enable that as a result of providing location awareness capabilities to the virtual desktop. Desktop session persistence, and again, this is around tapping out, moving to a different location, and accessing the same desktop, right? So the session is in the data center. The virtual desktop session is in the data center. Application is running in the same session, and nothing has changed. So as a result of moving and accessing the same virtual desktop, your session is intact, your applications are intact, and you don't have to relaunch the application at that point. And finally, with tapping in or accessing your session again, you're enabling or you're accessing the same capabilities that we provide as part of our technology, right? Session persistence, location identification, and printer remapping support. Like I said, we provide some level of printer remapping, but if you want to do something application-specific, we also enable that. And this is what I talked about as part of my previous slide as well, and I tend to do this. I jump ahead and then have to kind of repeat myself. But location awareness features are essentially device identification passed through to the virtual desktop, which is the client name that this gentleman was talking about. Connect, reconnect triggers, which is to notify the applications of the new location. And the last but not least is we have this new capability with View 4.5, where we actually have a GPO object that you can import in, and it's a table. So with some of these applications, what we've noticed is that there's actually a back-end table where you're setting up the printer mapping, right? Saying this device name corresponds to this printer. So we've bundled in that capability into View for customers as well, so that this GPO object can be used to map your default printers or printers based on the device name. So you can go into this table and say, for this IP range, I want this printer, or for this MAC identifier, I want this printer, or for this computer name, I want this printer, right? So that table can be set up by importing this GPO object into your Active Directory schema, and you then have an administration interface to go in there and make those changes and have your own printer mapping table. Sure, question? 4.5, yes. And if you go to the View website, vmware.com/product/view, there's a white paper on this that you can download. So we provide all of these, software capabilities, right? But you can also access the virtual desktop from different devices within your clinical environment. So you have the workstation on wheels, computer on wheels scenario that I talked about. You have remote users who want to use their home PC to log in and access their applications, charts, radiology images, and so on. And with PC over IP, we also support now radiology images, right, which you might have heard about if you attended Frank's sessions or any of the other sessions around View and PC over IP, right? And we're doing work with multiple imaging vendors to virtualize PACS applications, cardiology applications, and allow users to use PC over IP to access those images. Mobile devices, I think you might have seen the announcement around the iPad support, where we have a client that runs on the iPad and can be used to access your virtual desktop in the back end. And we do that today with what's called the Wyse Pocket Cloud, which you can use. It's an application built by Wyse, which you can download to your iPad and connect to your virtual desktop. How are we doing on time, Stuart? Okay. So device, we talked about different devices that you can use to access your virtual desktop. So now let's move on to application virtualization. Like I said in the beginning of the presentation, there's desktop virtualization and application virtualization. And we actually use application virtualization to enhance desktop virtualization because the desktop by itself is not too interesting. You need the applications that are running within the context of that desktop to make it more interesting, right? So application virtualization, just for those who are not familiar with it, I'll just walk through the capabilities here. I don't know why this slide is kind of building a little funny. But this is your traditional view of the operating system and applications running within the operating system. What we do with ThinApp, which is our application virtualization technology, is take all of the libraries, DLLs, executables associated with an application and bundle that into a single container or a single executable. Now, that executable is a single file, and that does not have to be installed on your desktop. So you can take that single file and host it on a network share and stream it down to end-user devices using just a regular shortcut, right? So you have a network share, you host the application there, and you create a shortcut on the end-user desktop, point it to that network share, and stream it down from there. This is a supported mechanism with Cerner Millennium, and Stuart and I have been working on this for a while. And this is also bundled into View 4.5 as a technology, right? So with View 4.5, you have the ability to say, okay, this is my ThinApp share, which is a network share, and point your virtual desktops to that network share and enable desktop pools to access certain applications from that ThinApp share. So this is technology that we have today, and it's bundled into View 4.5. So the benefits of ThinApp are that we decouple the application from the operating system, right? So this enables you to do a couple of things. You can run multiple versions of applications of the same application on the same desktop at the same time. So if you have, Cerner test on a different version and Cerner prod on a different version, you can run both of those versions on the same desktop at the same time. And we've seen this being done at a couple of customers that Stuart and I have worked on. So there's the 2007 version, and there's multiple variants of that we've worked with that run simultaneously on the same end-user device, for example, while you're testing, a newer version. So it's an agentless architecture. You don't need any kind of agent on the end-user device itself. So it's totally free of any installation on the end-user device. So you can just host it on a network share, or if you choose to install, I shouldn't say install because there is no installation, but if you choose to copy that package or that file over to the end-user device, you can also launch it directly from that end-user desktop. So the benefits are you can minimize the number of desktop images or the number of application images that you have to deploy to your end-user devices, right? So you can make sure that your application is managed better because you just have one place to go and update the application. So this is similar to a Citrix deployment scenario, right, where you have this notion of a centralized server farm to manage and maintain your applications. Similarly, if you take ThinApp into that context or scenario, you can have your application packaged as a single executable, and you can update that application at a single location and stream it down to multiple end-user devices. And there's also ways to upgrade that application so that if you have a newer version of the application, we have this notion of a side-by-side application, right? So where you can have the newer version of the application right next to the older version of the application, and when the user signs out and signs back in or relaunches the application, it automatically picks up the newer version of the application. So there's benefits to application virtualization around application management, application maintenance, and running multiple versions at the same time. So it is a cost-effective solution, as in you don't need a server farm to now run your applications, right? All you need is a network share and the ability to stream that application down to the end-user device. So there is no server farm maintenance costs, and it's easier to maintain and manage your applications. And there's actually zero downtime during application packaging because of the capability that I talked about before, where you can have the newer version of the application sitting right next to the older version, and the user just logs off and logs back in and relaunches the new version of the application. And finally, this is the overall deployment architecture, right, at a very high level as to how your end users would access virtual desktops. So you have a pool of virtual desktops that's hosted in your data center, and you have View Manager, which is our connection broker, brokering connections back to the appropriate virtual desktop pool. You have ThinApp, which is streaming applications to those virtual desktops. ThinApp applications have been packaged and hosted on a network share, and this is for internal users. For external users, you have a VPN software that you use to let users get into your network and then access virtual desktops over VPN. So this picture will change, hopefully, in the near future because, as some of you might be aware, today we had this notion of a security server before, which was supporting direct connectivity to the virtual desktop without VPN in the middle. But with PC over IP, we didn't have that capability, but we now are building that in, and it should be available in the short term. So once we have the security server support for PC over IP, that VPN layer goes away, and it's replaced by our security server, which brokers external connections back to your virtual desktop as well without having a VPN solution in place. But today, partner solutions like Juniper and Cisco work with PC over IP and can be used to access your virtual desktop in the data center. And since I'm running short on time, I'll skip through these and hand it off to Stuart.
Thanks, Pramod. So I'm here to talk to you about Cerner Instant Access with VMware View today. And without further ado, let's get into the slide deck. So a little bit about Cerner. Cerner Millennium is a healthcare information technology computing platform helping professionals elevate safety, quality, and efficiency. Most of you who are Cerner clients probably know a little bit more about the Cerner story. For those of you who don't, we offer solutions for hospital and health systems, physician practice, life sciences, employers, home care, devices, retail pharmacy, and HCIT services. So, Cerner Instant Access, this is the goal. The goal for Instant Access is optimizing the workflow experience for the clinician by reducing the time it takes to get to the point of productivity in their workflow while ensuring patient privacy and organizational security compliance are maintained. So that's a pretty big, lofty goal, but it's what the clinicians are demanding today. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the issues that you have delivering a solution like that. Typically, when you fix one side of that solution, you're compromising another end to that. So here are some of the desktop workflow challenges in healthcare. The goal is to provide better patient care. So how do we provide better patient care? One of the ways we do is allow people to get access to that data quicker. So how do I get to my chart faster? What types of things are in my way that slow that down? Multiple logins, passwords. So basically, desktop and application security is going to slow that workflow. The typical workflow optimization creates security risks, so you end up giving up things in order to get a better workflow. and low tolerance for security optimizations that impede workflow. Most of the clinicians I talk to aren't as concerned about that as they are about providing patient care, yet there's a whole group of security folks in all of your organizations that will not compromise that. Another goal is optimize inpatient-outpatient workflow. So based on who you are and the type of scenario that you work, those workflows can be different. They can be task-based, they can be context-sensitive, based on inpatient-outpatient workflows, so in-office computers, in-room computers, and purpose-dedicated computers like lab stations, med stations, immunization areas, ICU, things of that sort. So why Cerner Instant Access? Well, there's lots of technology that evolves around delivering application access to healthcare apps. And really the focus is around the end user experience. So when we set out to design this solution, we were really focused on trying to provide better ways, quicker ways, faster ways to access the applications to improve the workflow of a clinician, especially with the onset of CPOE. This becomes very, very important that we shave as much time as possible getting them productive. And really it's all about, again, at the end of the day, providing better patient care. So optimize clinical workflow with Cerner Instant Access. So basically, this is kind of what the process looks like. You sign into your applications, you find your patient, you navigate to data, you transition to another user, and we're trying to turn that process, which has typically been sometimes, in some cases, a minutes-long process, into a matter of seconds. So this really equates to more time with patients, which is the end goal. So instant access workflow optimization with VMware View. So one of the workflows that we have with instant access, and instant access is an overarching solution that supports several methodologies. The virtual VDI has allowed us to extend this functionality to a virtual desktop. And we've got some reasons why we feel that's a good way to go deliver it that we'll expand upon as we go through this. But basically, it would be for the roaming clinician and providing location context and, of course, some printer mapping capabilities to go with that. So Cerner Follow Me Desktop supports clinician roaming, being the application at the point where they left off. So that's that persistence that Pramod talked about. And obviously be able to do some dynamic mapping of the location where you're at, front and back end printers, and people familiar with Cerner know all about that location requirement, and we'll get a little deeper in that in just a second. So this is called Follow Me Desktop. That's the name that Cerner has kind of put around that solution in instant access. So I'm not going to revisit workflow that Pramod already talked about. Suffice to say, it's all about making that initial connection and then being able to continue to roam throughout the day. So here's the value proposition for Cerner Instant Access. Reduce logins. So the goal of this solution is to require one login to your applications per day. Then reduced access time. So the next goal is in less than 10 seconds to time to order from engaging the end user device. So this supports the CPOE initiative, and really what we're talking about is in 10 seconds or less I'm reconnected and I'm once again productive in the applications without having to log in and sign into those applications again. Another goal is secure access. So we try to leverage technologies such as advanced authentication to provide a more seamless workflow experience and assist with the security mandates and requirements. So this is all about not exposing security risks, HIPAA risks, as part of the process of enabling quicker access to the applications. And then an additional goal is patient and user context. So based on who you are and where you are, what type of connection do you get? Is it going to be a venue-based or a role-based type of connection? In a typical Follow Me desktop, it's role-based. So some of the things we're working on is being able to provide some flexibility along those lines, where it could be tied to the particular venue, or when you have a device that might be device to patient associated. So here's the value proposition. Maintain streamlined, secure workflow. So fast and convenient desktop login, secure desktop switching between users, single sign-on, sign-off to all applications, and then, of course, persist the application state for those roaming users. To secure all managed applications with one step, whether that's through a proximity type of solution or using a function key, we can provide that, and then protect from walk-away scenarios as well. Location awareness, this is something near and dear to my heart, being involved with WTS location, advanced location, and those solutions for Cerner at Citrix, or a Citrix-based solution for Cerner on that particular setting for years. We've extended this functionality to the virtual desktop so we can get that same type of capability that's required to run Millennium successfully. So this allows us to propagate updated client location to the desktop and the applications. And we do other things with our location awareness that kind of syncs all those together, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But in some cases, for a hosted app from a virtual desktop, we would force a disconnect and a reconnect to those applications, to those sessions, so we get the updated location requirements on the Citrix session. So what is Cerner's Instant Access Solution Bundle? Well, it includes a few different Cerner tools some of you may or may not be familiar with. The first being LDAP authentication. This is Cerner's Active Directory integration for Millennium authentication. So single source of truth, Active Directory to deliver the trusted credentials into the Millennium app. And what that does is when you launch Millennium, you no longer see the Millennium security screen for logging in. So Cerner server would basically launch and load, but you don't have to put in those credentials. It's absolutely the fastest and cleanest and best way to single sign-on into Millennium when you provide it with the pass-through authentication piece. And these two pieces are part of the Instant Access Solution Bundle. Of course, WTS location, if you're running in a XenApp type of environment for your Millennium app, then you'll need WTS location just to provide the location information that we're all used to, which is based on the client name, to provide front end, in some cases back end, and any other location logicals to the Millennium application. In addition, this bundle includes WTS Advanced Location. This is Cerner's tool to allow you to leverage the capabilities of WTS Location, dynamically updating the unique Millennium configuration, refreshing printers and preferences based on the location of the new device. So this allows us to do roaming from within a Citrix session. And now the newest piece of this technology provided by Cerner is the Location Listener. This is designed specifically for virtual desktops. And what this does is it provides location awareness at the virtual desktop layer, plus it monitors connectivity changes and communicates with all layers of the technology. So the thin client device, the virtual desktop, a XenApp session, Millennium, whether it's loaded locally. And so what it does is it dynamically updates the location requirements to that desktop and also triggers events that would take place if you're reconnecting to a hosted session. And that hosted session is basically a Citrix XenApp session. Cerner Instant Access Deployment. These are some of the deployment methodologies we use. View Desktop, ThinApp as a virtualized app, a Citrix XenApp deployment, or any combination of the above. So we can deliver Millennium directly to a virtual desktop. We can deliver it over ThinApp. We can deliver Millennium to that virtual desktop through a Citrix session, providing location awareness across that particular platform. So basically, you choose what your deployment option or the methodology you want to go run with, and you can even use this as kind of a swing solution if you're moving away from a Citrix XenApp session to something on the BDI desktop, or a combination thereof. So quickly, these are some overviews of things that Pramod's already talked about. VMware ThinApp uses to deploy Millennium software to local workstation and or to Citrix servers. Obviously, one of the benefits is multiple versions can be deployed being on a virtual file system and virtual registry. Those applications are isolated, so you don't have application integration issues. And one thing to mention about a virtual desktop is we really see that as an enterprise play. So on a virtual desktop, you can deliver all the other apps to your roaming users that require a full desktop, and any other application in your organization. So this isn't all about Cerner, because Cerner is one app that you guys deliver in healthcare today. So what we enable is the ability to have location awareness across that with our listener as well. So we can provide that type of value for other solutions that you run that are healthcare specific that need a location requirement. VMware View is another methodology to deliver Millennium, and this would be a virtual desktop where Millennium software is deployed locally, and we use the Cerner Instant Access solution to provide that type of workflow experience and give the location awareness that's required. VMware View plus ThinApp. So this is when you have virtual desktops deployed, Millennium deployed as a ThinApp solution, runs locally in a virtual desktop, and also we take advantage of the instant access solution to give the required functionality there. VMware View plus XenApp. So this is virtual desktops where Millennium is deployed via XenApp hosted session. And it uses, of course, pass-through technology for that. So you have to make certain that that's tuned well for that. We have this in several clients that are using this, and we're getting good performance, but sometimes you have to work through issues with pass-through and making certain that those graphics end up being clean at the very end connection. And of course, we can't guarantee performance across that. And it does increase potential device integration issues if you have devices that start out at that end device, need to make it through the virtual desktop layer, and then all the way into the XenApp session itself. So just be aware of those types of challenges that would come up. This requires Cerner's instant access, and it is the only option today for CernerWorks remote-hosted clients or for those of you who are remote-hosted with Cerner someplace else. But we do have a solution that fits that would allow you to put a virtual desktop in your environment and take advantage of all the other reasons from a management perspective that you would want to run a virtual desktop. So conclusions are, yes? Sure.
My question was kind of the 4 ways that you deploy there.
Mm-hmm.
What's the most prolific one that you guys see? Is it one over the other? What's the recommended?
Well, I think every client is on a case-by-case basis, primarily because they may have other strategies or reasons why they're not moving away from one particular platform or another. Suffice to say, if you were starting from square one, scratch today, your choice could be a Citrix deployment or a VDI deployment. So then it'd really be all about costs, right? I'm going to come in, I'm going to put new devices. Sometimes it's based on the strategy for doing device replacement, end device replacement, end of life on licenses within their organization for a prior technology. A lot of things factor into it. In terms of performance, I think they all work well and meet our mandates of the less than 10 second that we had in our initial goals out front. So I would say the fewer moving parts is probably going to be the less complex, but that may not be a choice if, for example, you're a CernerWorks client. So we have to deliver for all of those.
I'm just curious, based on the number of Cerner clients that you have,
Mm-hmm.
which one is the most common?
Well, today the most common deployment of Cerner is Citrix. So we're still kind of early in the game to be able to predict any trends with VDI. VDI has gone through a slow adoption cycle. It's new technology. Based on the ones who have moved down that road, we probably got an even mix across the board. Some are looking at it as a replacement for Citrix. Others are looking at ThinApp, which is a bigger, longer project to work through. Yes?
Today what you're saying for remote hosted clients, you have XenApp serving out the virtual desktop?
Yeah, so in a remote hosted scenario, your VDI infrastructure would be located on premise, on your premise, and then you would make that connection to CernerWorks to launch your Citrix XenApp session. Question?
Yeah, can't do a remote hosted with pure VMware layers.
That's correct, because today that's not an option at CernerWorks, where they say, hey, we'll put a VDI infrastructure back there today. We don't know. That's certainly something that they've certainly talked with our group about. My group primarily focuses on the client-hosted, but we work with the CernerWorks group in that technology. That would be a big infrastructure change for them. I think the key points for organizations are, do you have other applications in your enterprise that you want to deliver? If you had VDI back at Cerner and was only delivering Millennium, in the end, is that really doing what you want? And that's why I focused on that statement of enterprise play. This allows you to put everything in your normal enterprise on that virtual desktop or access it from that virtual desktop as well as your hosted applications.
So I don't want to get bogged down in additional questions. This is a wider one, and it is, in your experience being in the marketplace and putting Cerner into various hospital environments and patient care environments, how many are doing it traditional way? What percentage are doing it the traditional way, without applying? That's what you're trying to replace predominantly.
It's
How many have moved into a VDI/terminal services/Citrix?
A very small handful of clients are doing it traditional. So this is kind of a move back towards traditional deploy with some, added capabilities. The reason why there's a value proposition there is things like Recompose and virtualized apps. And so it's making people take a look, because Citrix was all about management, right? Having a smaller group of servers to update code for many users, user consolidation, or a form of server consolidation. So, I think there's a big shift in the marketplace, and they see the other things. My driving goal is to push more, role-based functionality in that solution, as well as moving more towards the dumb terminal type of scenario. I think IT's making that shift back from a non-distributed model again, all based on that. I just want a dumb device out there where all I got to do is go plug it in, and if I had a session running, it's still running. I plug it in and I log in, or I tap in again, and I'm back and I'm productive. And that is a huge piece, and that seems to be the recurring theme. People are really focused on trying to make that device as slim as possible out there. So the next wave of devices and the next wave of tech refresh is probably going to determine where that's at. So the zero clients aren't quite there yet, in our opinion, based on support for the types of devices you need. So you got to be real specific when you enter into a project on that. Yes?
Your location awareness, your dynamic location awareness, what do you key on for that? Specifically, I'm speaking to a wireless network and roaming.
Okay, so one of on our roadmap is to tie in location awareness to the computers on wheels or those types of devices with our EPS solution. So our EPS is an enterprise positioning solution, which is a location aware. We will subscribe to that. So if you have that type of bus, the Cerner iBus, MD bus solution, and you have location awareness, or using any of our Sonitor type of location awareness that would go on the docks specifically, we're going to tie that to the carts and the devices. So that's the next step that is coming with our solution, to provide that type of awareness for a roaming device. And that solves that issue that's been out there forever, now that we have that capability within core Millennium infrastructure and delivering location services across the bus.
Do you intend to include a single sign-on solution like Imprivata in this offering?
Imprivata is the solution that we have this tied into.
So if we purchase this solution, you're going to get Imprivata with it?
You don't get Imprivata with the bundle, but when you add Imprivata, what we do is we use Imprivata to trigger things that happen out on the device. We've got some code that sits on a front-end device, which you can't put on a zero client today, which basically when you tap in, it says, who am I and where am I? And now deliver me what I need. So for example, I'm a task worker. I only need a Citrix session. If you had that in your environment, give me the published app that I need. You tap in and you're a doc, says, I'm a doctor, give me my full desktop. It'll bring that desktop there. So we're working on things that really make the devices more flexible in terms of what it's delivering to the users itself. So a device as a kiosk can support multiple workflows. So that's one of the pieces that we're working on. But that today can't be done on a zero client, and we're continuing to work to see if there's ways we can integrate that type of functionality in there. Yes? It's not required. So it provides some additional benefits. For example, if I tap in with an Imprivata solution and I walk away and forget to tap out, when I tap in on another device, pulls the session, locks the device. Okay? So is that a be-all, end-all? No, it's just a nice feature. It does some session management out at the devices itself. Can you accomplish that other ways? Certainly. You can accomplish that through active proximity with another solution. That's why the bundle is separate from the SSO solution. But we try to provide a solution that rounds and meets all those. If clients already have an SSO solution, we will work with them to integrate as best as we can that functionality. So you can think of it as breaking down the layers. You have a layer at the end device, you've got a layer at the virtual machine, and then potentially you can have a layer back at a XenApp session. So we try to break down those pieces and provide the most flexibility we can. We had a question over here.
Maybe we should repeat the question.
Can you repeat that question just a little bit louder for me? So the question is whether doctors would like to bypass or circumvent the single sign-on security. The way we configure it, to answer that question, the way we configure it is such that it requires that login. So they would have to go through the Imprivata Gina in order to get to that device. So there isn't a way for them to bypass that. But even if they had bypassed that, then of course it depends on what's made available to that kiosk-type desktop, right? They would still have to log in. All they're doing is bypassing something that is allowing them to start the login process automatically for them and create a session on the end device that could then be acted upon, like in the workflows that I described when you walk away and your session gets pulled to you, whether it's a VDI or a XenApp session, and then that previous device is left exposed to security risks. So there's reasons why you don't want to allow them to do that, and that would be because we can control those pieces, or you have the capability to control those pieces with solutions that are available on the market, and we use Imprivata as one example.
Stuart, I think the question was also around satisfaction around the Imprivata solution. Can you comment on that?
I think what we're seeing is a lot of clinicians realize that, number one, they want quicker access. Number two, they're not going to be allowed to get around the security requirement. So I think there's been a little easing in the pressure from that side. So I think satisfaction overall is up with all SSO or advanced authentication solutions because they realize it's all part of the price that you pay to get, quicker access. And based on how many applications, it becomes exponential. If they've got to log into each app and several of them require authentication, that's a lot of work. In the end, I think it's probably a balance of those two. If they've only got one app to log into, you might be hard-pressed to sell them, that type of advanced authentication solution. Yes? Not yet today. We have customers that we're going down the road with on that. Most of our testing and validation for ThinApp has been done either directly to the thick clients or to VDI. But I can tell you that when we started working with Promote a couple years ago, our engineering group was working with that solution in kind of a test process. And again, there's kind of a difference here. We've got support for it from client hosted through client validation. Our engineering group hasn't necessarily made a choice in how they go deliver that and whether they deliver that with ThinApp or other solutions that are out on the market. But it is supported.
So for client hosted, it is supported?
It's supported for client hosted, providing we go through validation, providing we go through that validation, that technology stack. Yes, we've got support arrangements with VMware on how we would escalate issues for that. And of course, it's all about due diligence at the end of the day, making certain that we take that through a proper testing cycle before we roll these things into production. Yes?
So do you actually have clients using the ThinApp Millennium in production at scale?
We don't have anybody in production today. We had a client that was going to be in production actually right around this time, but what we did in this case was we ran out of time to complete this. There were a couple of small issues that they considered showstoppers for production. To be quite honest, most of their issues were around the DBA apps and not the power charts and the first nets and those types of apps. But they decided that their success criteria was a wider range of applications to get there. And since they had an Cerner Upgrade Center project going on, they're postponing that till after the completion of that project. So they had to stay in the existing platform in order to make that production roll. Yes?
With this single sign-on solution and the desktop portability, we have a web-based application for you to log in. Does that session stay maintained across the various desktops as well?
Yes. So you would use, if you had a web-based app that needed single sign-on, absolutely. We could, once you've launched to that particular web page with the single sign-on, you would learn the credentials for it, and then as you roamed, it would roam keeping that window open. As long as you didn't close that web session or weren't disconnected based on timeouts back on the web session itself, it would roam with you. Yes. Yes, sir.
The question is, again, a broader one, and I guess it's both focused. You don't have any questions, so I'm going to address you first. Challenges with public cloud in a healthcare context, compliance, et cetera. What are your views? And I'm interested in your views as well, because Cerner certainly has conceptualizes
Yeah, so when you talk about public clouds, I think there's a couple of things we are seeing, right? So like I was saying during my presentation, most of the ISVs seem to want to control that experience and provide a public cloud notion to their customers, not necessarily leveraging true public clouds like Savvis, Terramark, and so on, but controlling that experience security around the application and making sure that connectivity is established at the required levels, right, to their environment. So most ISVs, Cerner is one of them, McKesson's another, Fuji's another. So all of these vendors are moving into or have already moved into the managed services offering model. And that's where they're seeing most of their traction. In fact, Cerner, I think if the numbers are right, 80% of your new customers are CernerWorks customers. So that's the public cloud model that we are seeing within healthcare. So it's not a true public cloud, but it is a hosted offering from the ISV itself. And that's more so to manage security, manage compliance required in a healthcare context, right? So I don't think we are at the point where they're comfortable with true public clouds and saying, okay, you guys understand the requirements of healthcare, so we'll trust you to run our applications. And I don't think that's the case today.
Okay. Yes.
Local mode. Do you see that changing anything here?
So the question is around local mode with View, which is check-in, check-out of virtual desktops. So we have not gone down that path with this solution at this point because local mode is, I think it was in preview until 4.5. So we haven't really experimented with that and kind of figured out how it maps into this.
We can certainly discuss it. I'm trying to see the fit for Cerner because without a back end, it doesn't really roam.
I agree with that, but then when you get home and bring up your desktop and you're going to connect out through the internet, I don't know.
Well, that's a long connection, first off, and that's back-end traffic, right, if you're doing, even with the VPN. So I think from a performance perspective, the decision we made was we're going to want a thin client connection to our VDI infrastructure, providing an external access point for that same thing. You could roam that same session. But we can certainly have discussions. I just know that the bandwidth...
Guys, we're kind of running out of time, and I think we're at the end of the slide deck.
Yeah, I think
But we are here for questions, so feel free to come up to us and ask us questions because we've kind of reached the end of the deck, and I think these are good questions, so we'll be glad to answer them offline.
We were actually done. Everybody was with it.
Thank you.
Thank you.